Good morning, everybody. Jock Mullen from An Garda Síochána. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Brian and Iviscon for the invite. An Garda Síochána are delighted to be here today. Maybe just talk a wee bit more about myself before I get into the presentation. I'm 31 years in policing across 3 jurisdictions. I worked in Dorset Police in the south of England for 20 years with a fine young man named Jake Moore, who's one of our fellow speakers here today. I met Jake 25 years ago. He's the most enthusiastic and hard-working analyst I ever worked with, and it's great to see him doing well. I think he's speaking at 12 o'clock. Jake, you don't have to say anything great about me when you speak. For anybody who doesn't know Dorset, the area, the main town is Bournemouth. They're a very good soccer team in the Premier League, and in fact, they beat Manchester City on the weekend, and I happened to be there. So it was a great game. I worked for 14 months at the London Olympics in 2012, which was the highlight of my career. And I worked in Northern Ireland for 4 years, including policing Derry for 12 months, which was the toughest year of my career. I don't know if anybody has watched the television series Blue Lights. I think it's on RTE in Ireland and maybe BBC in the UK. But it gives you a wee bit of an insight into modern day policing in Northern Ireland. So I enjoyed Northern Ireland, but I had a really tough year working in Derry. I've been with An Garda Síochána for 6 years, 5 in the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, coming up to my year's anniversary in the Cybercrime Bureau. So how did I end up coming into cybercrime after 31 years of policing? In 2015, whilst working in Northern Ireland, a young man named Ronan Hughes, then aged 17 years old, he took his own life as a result of being a victim of cyber blackmail, more commonly referred to as sextortion. This had a devastating impact on his family and communities right across Northern Ireland. It was the most challenging investigation of my career, and it brought with it a huge amount of media and political attention. But it was brought to a successful conclusion thanks to the support of the business community and the cooperation of many foreign jurisdictions, which is very relevant to our subject matter today, which is working together to fight cybercrime. I'm extremely passionate about keeping people safe, and particularly young people who continue to be extremely vulnerable every day whilst online. Hence, when the opportunity came up 11 months ago, I joined the Cybercrime Bureau. I just want to make an appeal to you, the guys out there today. There's lots of experts in this room. I'd ask you, I know we're talking more about business here today, you are experts across this room here. Please continue to use your experience and your positions at every opportunity to help keep our young people safe. Every day in the Cybercrime Bureau, we see children at risk. So please, if you get the opportunity in your expert roles to, go into your children's school or third level education, please take that opportunity. So what do we do in the Cybercrime Bureau in An Garda Síochána? Well, we've 84 members of staff across 5 geographical locations: Dublin, Galway in the west, Mullingar, which is about an hour from here, Cork in the south, and Wexford in the southeast. At the top there, about 60% of our work is associated with the examination of devices associated with serious crime. So if there's a murder, a rape, a blackmail, the Cybercrime Bureau examine all digital media and in some cases analyse the outcome of such an examination. About 30% of our work is associated with investigations, and I've got Detective Sergeant Michael Ryan, who runs the investigation team, here with me today. We have 18 complex cyber-dependent investigations on the go, the majority of which won't surprise you, are ransomware investigations. About 10% of our work, and not enough in my opinion, is around cyber prevention and community safety, an area where we're continually trying to expand our capacity and capability, recognising clearly that it's better to prevent the crime occurring in the first place. And more generally, there's 21 policing divisions across Ireland, and we have national units that do expert-type work, and we support them in searches, evidence recovery, conferences, external support, and overall best practice. I just wanted to introduce you to our cybercrime model, which we have in An Garda Síochána. If you look at the triangle here, at the bottom of our triangle is our 14,000 strong workforce in An Garda Síochána. And our objective, as part of the initial training, supported by continuous professional development, is that every member of An Garda Síochána has an awareness of cybercrime and the ability to investigate less type cybercrime matters. Just above the bottom, the second tier up, is our digital evidence first responders. We have about 150 digital responders across the organisation, They are locally trained members who attend the scenes of crimes and can carry out pre- and post-mortem forensics. We've also 180 people at that level who can examine mobile devices and carry out the analysis of those mobile devices seized. And second from the top, you have our cybercrime hubs. It's part of the introduction: Galway, Mullingar, Wexford, and Cork. And similar to my previous slide, 60 to 70% of the work is examining devices from serious crime investigation. 20 to 30% is supporting investigations across the country. And I really encourage the guys to go out on a regular basis and provide prevention advice to schools, third-level education, and working very closely with the business community. And at the very top of the triangle, you have our main bureau, which is based in Walter Scott House near Euston Station in Dublin. That's where we have the strategic overview, including the overview of our engagement with partners, both domestically and internationally. Excuse me, guys. So the primary cases encountered by the Bureau are on the right-hand side. And last week there was an article in the Irish media from the Hiscox Cyber Readiness Report. Just a few facts. 3/4 of Irish businesses have reported an increase in cyber attacks in the last year. Irish companies are reporting 58 cyber attacks per month. This is a problem for us because this would suggest under-reporting to An Garda Síochána, which is something I'll talk a bit more about. Businesses reported that they had suffered reputational damage, with 47% stating they had considerable challenges in attracting new business. 52% of businesses reported losses of over €100,000, and not surprisingly to the people in the audience, 11% of businesses reported losses between €1 million and €10 million. In respect of ransomware, we see ransomware as a service expanding the threat range, and as a previous speaker mentioned, we see an increase in small and medium enterprises being victims of ransomware. In respect of phishing, 41% of cyber attacks are conducted via phishing, and 1 in 99 emails are now received are a phishing attack. So some research that has been done by ourselves and other organisations is that the transition to remote and hybrid working, most people working from home, or a blended home and office environment, has increased the risk of cyber attacks. Pressures and stresses related to work now creeping into that home environment. Lack or lesser impact of cybersecurity alerts remind us at home compared to that environment in the working environment. And when people are under pressure, emotional responses increase and the logical response decreases. Finally, but significantly, the question to pay or not to pay. Research again has shown that when a ransomware is paid, 29% of organisations got half the data back. 8% got half the data back. 8% got their data back, and 80% continue to be victims of repeated demands. So the message from An Garda Síochána is quite simply not to pay. Now, on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see the statement, gangs now employ techies to support criminal activity. We have a very recent example, led by Mick Ryan here, of a young man in Dublin, never been in trouble with An Garda Síochána before, being actively recruited by a high-profile organised crime group to commit cyber criminality. And he eventually became himself a highly significant international member of that organised crime group. A young man who had a great upbringing, a young man who had a good education, is now going through the courts in Dublin. And he was actively recruited because of the skills that he had in the non-criminal environment. As you're aware, cybercrime is evolving to take account of new protections on systems, technology and victims. Development of evasion techniques. Threat actors, as you know, work very hard to avoid detection and also work hard to blend with the target environment. We're seeing increased use of living off the land, increased exploitation of remote monitoring and management, advancements in anonymization techniques. We continue to see proxy, VPN, Tor as the primary tools for the purpose of remaining anonymous. Adoption of cloud solutions. We see increased use of the cloud for a legitimate purpose for storing data. Whilst this is great for business, it also brings with it additional risks that data could be exposed or stolen. And it also adds a layer of complication for law enforcement through internationalization and anonymization. Social engineering, huge issue. The system user remains the weakest link in the security chain. The obtaining of genuine user credentials becomes the easiest way to defeat security systems. The adoption of artificial intelligence, mentioned before, continues to be a challenge. And for example, large-scale operations by threat actors, call centre with scripted conversations using AI. And continued specialisation of roles. Modern cybercrime groups' internal structures resemble business entities. So Mick Ryan and I were chatting last night. When we look at our cybercrime, organised crime groups, they have administration people, people to do the finance, people that are at the top, people that are somewhere in the middle. It's like any reputable business here in Ireland and in the UK. There's a structure to these organised criminals. You're not going to see the video, guys. Okay. So this is the physical and technical challenges that impact on the investigative process and influence how it progresses on the level and reliability of evidence. So some facts for you. We're now examining more phones and computers. We're currently training additional members in the Garda Síochána to examine computers extracted from vehicles. So any vehicle 2016 onwards, most of them have a really good computer system inside, and you wouldn't believe what we can get from those vehicles. We've had some really good convictions in court where data from wearable devices, such as a smartwatch, has been crucial to the conviction. And we started examining drones as part of our investigations. In short, the variety of media examined continues to increase. This results in my members have to be trained and capable and examine the variety of media and digital highlighted on the slide that you're seeing here now. This results in the Bureau having to ensure that our hardware and software is up to date, fit for purpose to examine the media and devices on the slide. And with the significant increase in data, this results in having to make sure our infrastructure is right to manage the significant increase in data across our 5 locations. But in response, I was only saying to somebody outside, in the last 6 years, our staff has increased by 300% in the Bureau. We're very fortunate that we have a continuous training plan that results in having highly skilled and trained investigators. We've staff dedicated to the continuous evaluation and improvement of our hardware and software. And we regularly seek advice and support from specialists from the private sector, many of whom are here today, for which we're very grateful. And we're very fortunate we get great support from Europol, Interpol, and the National Cyber Security Centre. I just want to talk a wee bit about jurisdictional challenges. I talked earlier in relation to my investigation in Northern Ireland, where the young man took his own life, having been a victim of cyber blackmail. This investigation involved the securing of data from multiple jurisdictions via the mutual assistance process. Whilst that process is tried and tested, it can be complex and time-consuming, depending on where the data is held. My victim was in Northern Ireland, and after 2 years we located the suspect in Romania, on the border of Hungary. This was an offence of blackmail, so where do we prosecute? And significantly, what are the views of the victim's family, the young man that died? In this case, for many different reasons, I decided to prosecute the case in Romania. And then how do we transfer 10 huge files of evidence safely and securely to Romania and ensure the correct translation of evidence? These are all challenges we have in relation to working with other jurisdictions. Within the Bureau, we continue to investigate the attack on our health service in 2021. And I pose a question: how do we secure evidence from unfriendly jurisdictions and jurisdictions that are currently in conflict? It's a big challenge. What I can tell you is that historically we have received evidence from unfriendly jurisdictions and jurisdictions that are in conflict, but it's complex, unpredictable, and very much inconsistent. A couple other questions I ask myself is, if an Irish victim's data is held on a server in the UK, but access is through its terminals in Ireland, where is the crime committed? If a hacker in Ireland attacks a system in the US, where is the investigation based? Who is jurisdiction, Ireland or the US? So the jurisdictional challenges in respect of data, victims, suspects, and more generally evidence is something we face daily. But with the support of international law enforcement, other state agencies, and again, yourselves, the business community, and in particular, the providers of data, we always seem to overcome those challenges. And the key to this is the relationships we have across the sectors. This leads us on nicely to the next slide. As you know, there's a divergence of laws and legal systems across the world. The roles of the police, the DPP, which is our prosecution service here in Ireland, and other prosecution services vary across the jurisdictions, and certainly did so in relation to my investigation between Northern Ireland and Romania, and many investigations since. This influences the investigation, the flow of information, and the acquisition of that evidence. And if we seek a disclosure on the MLAT process, there must be a similar law in both jurisdictions. But laws differ, as you know, even within the EU. And lack of clarity in law can lead to the collapse of a trial. We've seen that here in Ireland before. But despite many efforts, laws and practice across jurisdictions, including the EU, remain not entirely unified. But on a positive note, I'm sure you've all seen the recent media in relation to the agreement between Ireland and the United Arab Emirates to extradite persons between the two jurisdictions. In my previous role, I was the head of extradition, and I was involved in drawing up the extradition agreement between the UAE along with the Department of Justice. This is a really good example of overcoming different laws, different cultures, and different barriers to send a clear message out to criminals who flee this jurisdiction that will continue to work with other jurisdictions to find them, to return them and bring them to justice. This is particularly important with cybercrime, as many cyber criminals operate from other jurisdictions, and in particular those hard to reach and in some cases unfriendly jurisdictions. Talk a wee bit about data. So the accessing of data from mobile devices, particularly our phones, seized as part of a search warrant, has become a significant challenge for Garda Síochána, but it's one I'm delighted to say that I think we've overcome. The example in the high-profile case of the DPP versus Patrick Quirk, for anybody who's residing in Ireland, I'm sure you've heard of the case, has changed the way we apply for search warrants, and significantly the requirement, we have to specify that we need to enter the digital space of those mobile devices. Just to give you the background of the case, so on the 3rd of June 2011, Bobby Ryan, a man went missing from a place called Fonogan in County Tipperary, about 2 hours from here. And 30th of April 2013, 2 years later, Bobby Ryan's body is found in a disused waste tank in Fonagoan in Tipperary on a farm where the suspect, Patrick Quirk, had the lease. Just to put it into context, Bobby Ryan and Patrick Quirk were in a love triangle with a local lady called Mary Lowry. In 2014, Patrick Quirk was arrested and suspected of the murder of Bobby Ryan. He was convicted in 2019. He appealed, and the Court of Appeal dismissed his appeal in 2021. And he went all the way up to the Supreme Court in Ireland here, where his conviction was affirmed by the Supreme Court, but significantly, the Supreme Court concluded that the warrant to search and seize items from Quirk's home address did not allow the Gardaí to enter the digital space on his computer. So to reiterate, as a result of the Supreme Court ruling, we must now stipulate within a search warrant exactly what items we're looking for as part of our evidence, and most significantly, what we require to enter, that we need to require to enter the digital space. This, believe it or not, includes phones taken from people off the streets, and even victims' phones. So if a victim of a rape comes into the police station here in Ireland, we want to enter the digital space, we must get a warrant to enter that digital space. Again, the case of Patrick Quirk that I've just described to you is subject of a documentary. It's called Mr. Moonlight. So again, if it's something you've got an interest in, you might want to Google or watch the documentary Mr. Moonlight. I want to talk very briefly open source research. With strict policies and procedures in Garda Síochána in relation to open source, it's an invaluable intelligence tool for law enforcement, but we recognise it has to be used appropriately. The use has to be proportionate within the guidelines of our policies and procedures. The use of open source by trained members is playing a crucial role in the identification of young people, domestically and internationally, who are victims of child sexual abuse. So I have a team of people in Ireland who are very much focused on looking at our media that we seize to see if we can identify children of sexual abuse. And even in the last 24 hours, I've got 2 or 3 significant leads where we've identified children who are at risk both here in Ireland and internationally. So open source is a great tool for us within Garda Síochána, and we use it obviously to try and keep people safe. Very quickly, the people factor, the process factor. As most of you know, every cyber attack has some form of human factor. Clicking on a link, lack of awareness of a cyber risk, taking shortcuts, updates not being carried out, no cyber training, mistakes not being reported to the Chief Information Officer or ICT because of fear of punishment. And of course, in some cases, corporate responses to cybercrime or cyber attacks can also be inadequate. For example, policies that are not enforced, poor monitoring, legacy systems, no regular patching, no contingency planning, lack of protocols for incident response, and trained or tested remain only words on a piece of paper. I believe this chart comes from the IBM Security Threat Intelligence Report 2023, and significantly, of the 80% of businesses as part of this research, 28% reported their cyber attack and 23% took no action whatsoever. So why should you as a business report a cyber attack to Garda Síochána or the police service where you're working in at the moment? Firstly, as I said, reporting is a big problem for ourselves. If you do report the cyber attack or crime, we will endeavour to bring the offenders to justice and will ensure you're provided with the support you deserve as a victim. I have an ever-growing team of experienced examiners and investigators who are passionate in the detection and prevention of crime or cybercrime. Reporting assists us and other law enforcement partners and the National Cybersecurity Centre to identify current and emerging threats and mitigate future attacks by various means. For example, the taking down of a darknet marketplace. So through reporting and information from other state agencies and business, on the 11th of October 2024, in conjunction with the UK, the US and the Dutch police, we closed down the Bohemia marketplace, which at the time was the biggest darknet marketplace in the world. This would not have been possible without the support of international law enforcement, other state agencies and the private sector. Our intelligence section and the National Cybersecurity Centre, through reporting and information received, regularly prevent cyber attacks, but I emphasise this relies on victims reporting the criminality. The Cybercrime Bureau recently produced a cyber prevention booklet for industry, business, and how to prevent your business being a victim of a cyber attack. Again, this would not have been possible to put this book together without the information provided by people in the room here today and other state agencies. The booklets are downstairs on our stand and you're very welcome to pick one up. It's also on our website and Garda Síochána's website. And I should point out that technically, under Section 19 of the Criminal Justice Act here in Ireland, it's an offence not to report a crime to Garda Síochána. I reiterate that I strongly encourage you to report if you're a business or a victim of cybercrime, and I give you my assurance that we will do everything we can to bring the persons responsible to justice, or alternatively administer some other form of sanction. Now, I just want to talk a wee bit about our strengths. I'm nearly there. And Garda Síochána have members based in Europol and many other countries across the world, including Spain, Portugal, Dublin, the US, Thailand, the UAE, and Colombia. Within the Bureau, we rely on these international colleagues on a daily basis. Our international colleagues are particularly crucial when we find ourselves in a high-risk situation where life is at risk and we can pick up the phone to them. We have 84 members who are highly skilled and trained in cyber investigation and prevention, including the forensic examination and analysis of mobile devices. And we have an extremely robust process, tried and tested, around digital forensics, which has been challenged on numerous occasions as part of a number of high-profile trials, and Mick Ryan, who's in front of me here, has been at many of those high-profile trials. We have a great relationship with law enforcement partners across the world, including Interpol, Europol, the US law enforcement, UAE, to mention a few. And in the last 6 months, the Bureau have had visitors from Hong Kong, Colombia, and the United States. They're all keen to learn what we are doing here in Ireland around cybercrime and cyber prevention. And last month, we hosted an international event in the Temple Morar Police College in Tipperary with 70 colleagues from 32 countries, as far afield as Australia and South America, in relation to the identification of victims of child sexual abuse. And that's done by the significant volume of media that we assess within our Bureau. This is an area, victim identification of children, where we're growing and we're now recognised as experts in the field. We have a great relationship with the UK and the National Crime Agency, and we work daily with the Police Service of Northern Ireland to prevent and detect cyber crime. And we have a great relationship, again, with the National Cyber Security Centre, academia here in Ireland, and industry in Ireland and the UK and beyond. So this is my final message, and to prevent a cyber attack. And I hope there's huge experience in this room. I know you're not offended by the advice given with the expertise here in the room, but this is based on what we currently still see, and I emphasise still see, within the Cybercrime Bureau. Safe, restrict public-facing information to what is necessary. I always ask the question, must you share the CEO's personal email? Multi-factor authentication has been mentioned here already this morning. You'd be surprised how many people and businesses still do not have multi-factor authentication. Please have robust policies for multi-factor authentication. Accept Don't accept emails, links, attachments, friend requests, or messages from unsolicited sources. Now, I wouldn't have told you this if it happened 11 months ago, but it happened before I joined the Cybercrime Bureau. So I was caught via a phishing email about 6 months before I joined the Cybercrime Bureau. It was a day when I was busy. I was actually cutting the lawn. The kids were driving me up the wall. As soon as I pressed the button, I knew I'd been the victim of a phishing scam. Unfortunately, I was able to recover the money thanks to the support of one of the major banks here in Ireland. And I'm sure within the room here, there's other people that have been subject to these scams. It just shows you again that police officer for 30 years and I pressed the button, I lost €300. Unfortunately, thanks to a major bank in Ireland, I got my money back. So again, if I was to ask people to raise hands in here, I'm sure there's people in here that have been in that situation as well. So you might see it as basic advice, but people are still pressing buttons like myself. Reliable, update software and systems from reliable sources. Work with your chief information security officers and system administrators, cyber security providers to develop a list or response specific to you. And most importantly, and this is the message I wanted to get across today, is tell. So I talked about under-reporting. I would urge you, whether in a professional or personal capacity, to always report threats, online abuse, phishing emails, mistakes made, basically any form of cybercrime, whether it's a crime against yourself or your business. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. And I don't know whether no questions. Okay, guys, listen, I'll be around for the rest of the day. And listen, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Brian.